Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the Rouge Rugby podcast where we talk about real Canadian rugby. I'm Stu Hardy, joined once again by Jeff Robinson. Jeff, it's been a mixed past couple of weeks, really, and I don't really want to start on a downer, but I think we have to talk about it, and that is the Canadian men's sevens in Sevens Division 2. Now, we'd had the first round in Nairobi, and that was a wash, essentially. 5 losses on the trot, and we knew that the hill that Canada had to climb was turning into a mountain with every game that passes, and, you know, they needed something. They needed to provide incredible performances in order to be able to turn it around. And unfortunately, the caliber of their opposition just was too high to summit. But let's go over the results of round 2 and round 3. Round 2 took place in Montevideo in Uruguay. Began with a 14-21 loss to Germany, followed by a 5-19 loss to Kenya, then a 14-22 loss to the USA, and then a 33-0 loss to Uruguay, before a final 41-14 win over Belgium. So, over 10 games, only 1 win. Then, mathematically, Canada was still in with a chance of getting through, but it would essentially mean that they would have to win every single game. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, that is not what happened. Round 3 took place in Sao Paulo, Brazil, and it began with a 24-22 loss to Uruguay, followed by a 12-26 loss to the USA, a 40-0 loss to Kenya, a 26-21 win over Germany, and finally a 29-33 loss to Belgium. So in both rounds, Canada finished 5th, but they finished 6th overall, and obviously only the top 4 teams could continue to the World Championship, so they were eliminated. At the time when the final result came in, there was speculation of what the continuation would be going into next season. It's now been revealed that it is essentially a duplicate of what has happened this season. Basically, Canada will have to go through regional qualification again to make it to Sevens Division 3, and then finish as one of the top 2 teams to make it to Division 2. And then basically be in this situation next year, hoping to make it back to the World Championship. Jeff, what are your reactions to these results?
Obviously, it's disappointing for everyone involved, players, management, fans, and all that. And it's interesting that it's going to be the same format next year because that's also a World Cup year for the 15 side. So I wonder a bit about squad depth with that one. It might be pretty difficult for them to be able to qualify that year then. It'll be interesting. Encouraging signs where the games did get closer as the tournaments progressed. It was definitely a learning curve as a young squad. It's like I said, it's going to be interesting for next season because I mean the pathway, yes, they should automatically almost qualify for Division 3, probably should have enough to get to Division 2, but again, there's going to be a mountain there, and they might not have as much player depth with the 15 side preparing for the World Cup that year. So it's going to be interesting for sure.
Yeah, I think as well there's also been a lot asked of interim Sevens head coach Christian Esterhuizen. You know, he was originally hired to take on the men's under-20s 15s team, assist with the Pacific Pride, and then he gets thrown into doing the men's sevens. I think that if there has to be changes made next year. Obviously, the current structure didn't work out. And I think one of the main things is hiring a permanent head coach that can see this team through to ideally LA 2028, maybe even a couple of seasons extra. I know the pickings at this point are pretty slim, especially if you're in the middle of the Olympic cycle. So, maybe it's going to be an internal hire or a hire within Canada, I should say. There is also the possibility to look further afield, obviously, because sevens is an Olympic sport. It does get government funding in order for it to have a strong representation at the Olympics. And obviously that has paid dividends for the women's team, defending silver medalists. So with the men, I think that, a little bit of investment is obviously going to pay off in the long term.
Well, the good news for the sevens men's squad is that the Olympic qualification is separate from this. And assuming USA as hosts are automatic qualifiers, if there is another North America spot, like really, that should be Canada's. Like,
yeah, I think. I think that's the likely. I mean, there were qualifiers for Europe, even though France were automatic as hosts. I think it is that the United States will automatically qualify. So, and it, I think as we've seen from like the women's team in sevens, is that not having to focus on being ready for Olympic qualification has allowed a lot of new players to step up to the plate and be able to perform. I mean, we've seen them have like fantastic results over Sevens Division 1. And yeah, but obviously there should be a regional qualifier. There should be one for North America. It's probably going to be round sevens. If not 2026, then 2027. And it is currently on track that Canada will be the team to qualify as champions from that. We definitely don't want to be going back to Monaco to have another final qualification tournament. But yeah, I think this is obviously a big change. We all know last year the rug was essentially pulled out of a lot of teams with the decision to restructure sevens. And now we know, like teams like the Irish men's national team, they just pulled funding for the men's sevens altogether, and now they've certainly fallen off. And obviously, we don't want the same to happen to the Canadian men in this regard. So, I think it's definitely, it is going to be an upfront cost, but I think it can ultimately pay dividends to Rugby Canada as a whole. All right, that was a bit of the dour, sad news. Let's talk about something more positive. Let's talk about some emerging players that have been able to stick their hand up and show that they are worthy of contention. Maybe even get recognition at senior level. I am, of course, referring to Canada's Under-21s women's tour of Ireland and England. They already had their first match. We talked about it in our last episode. A recap, the score from that game: Canada 48, Ireland 24. And then their next opponent was the British Army, women's under-20s team. The final score from that game was the British Army 10, Canada 58. So an incredible turnaround, including performances from Adia Pye, Sophie McDonald, Adelaide Holmes, all three of them picking up 2 tries apiece. Other try scorers were Olivia Newsome, Faith Tilley, Chandrea Sharman, and Camille Arvin Barod, all picking up 1 try, and Newsome also picking up 4 conversions as well. But the main focus of this tour has always been England. Their senior women's team are currently the defending world champions. They are the world number 1. What does that say for England and their next generation of players coming through at the moment? Well, after this result, I would probably say that Canada could definitely be eyeing that world number 1 spot. We had Kiki Idowu picking up 3 tries, Adia Pye picking up another 2 tries, Ivy Potka and Brooke Rempel, Cedrine Foucher, Camille Arvin Barad, Adelaide Holmes, Sydney Woodcock, all picking up one try each. Olivia Newsom picking up 2 conversions as well for the final score of England 21, Canada 59. So, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone in between, get out those brooms. It was a clean sweep for our women in Ireland and England on this tour. 3 victories from 3 games. Excellent performance. And yeah, I think that we had a quote from someone on the team saying, I think it's important that this is support from our sponsors. Getting behind this program is crucial. We're grateful for them to help making these experiences possible. Dean Merton, the head coach of the women's under-21s women's team, said it's an outstanding tour for this team, not only from a results point of view, but we saw some outstanding individual performances across the team. It's important to note that going on these tours, going to a world-class country and training in world-class environments is exciting for the women. I think that the players got both the great experience of training in high-performance training centers, and they had a lot of great times with each other, so they've built some good bonds with their teammates through this tour. I mean, Jeff, after, talking about, 2 victories over 15 games with the men's sevens, getting 100% record in the women on this tour, it's definitely good news to hear about.
It was a clean sweep. Yes, that's great news. Especially the England. I mean, uh, not surprised they won, but comes across as a decisive victory. That was good on them. I don't want to say it's a surprise, but good on them for doing that and getting some eyes open there. And hopefully, they can translate that game when they go to the senior level too. And it's a very interesting result, I think. Very interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and in the week where Premier Women's Rugby is reaching out to other teams across England, Scotland, Wales, and Ireland, talking about expansion and getting women's teams going to expand the league further, I think there may have been a fair few talent scouts at that Canada-England game looking at potential players that they can scoop up and have ready for their squad and get into a senior professional environment. But absolutely one coach that definitely was keeping his eye out was head coach Kevin Rouet, friend of the podcast, coming on and breaking down. We have had the announcement of the Pacific for 2026 squad. We have 30 players coming to vie for selection for the Matchday 23s for their games that will be held across the United States. And some names that I've read out are also going to be in the Pac 4 as well. This includes Brooke Rempel, Adia Pai, as well as Kiki Idowu as well. So those names, they've definitely done the business in England, and now they're looking to hopefully vie for selection against Australia, New Zealand, or the United States. Speaking of the squad as a whole, we have some more familiar names I'm sure Canadian rugby fans have heard. Alex Tessier will return as captain for the Pac-4 series. We're also seeing returns of Dalika Menin, currently sitting second on Canada's all-time caps list with 69. Asia Hogan-Rochester, the player who scored 5 tries for Canada at the World Cup, and the World Rugby Player of 2025, Sophie de Goody. It is going to be a pretty mixed team. Obviously, this is the first test matches for Canada women since the World Cup, so it's interesting to see a good mix of familiar faces as well as young players coming through. Jeff, what do you make of the squad that was announced?
Well, it's a mix of veterans and up-and-comers. It's the first year of a new World Cup cycle. This is the time to introduce the new players. It is a result-oriented sport.
Mm-hmm.
Congrats to those who are returning from the World Cup squad, and congrats to those who have made their mark in the U21 tour and got named to the squad. I'm excited to watch all of you play.
Yeah, and thankfully, because the games will be held in the continent of North America, it's going to be able to watch those games at reasonable o'clock instead of all the times for New Zealand and Australia. Not that we have anything against our siblings across the Pacific, but sometimes you just want to be able to watch a game at a reasonable hour and not have to set an alarm at 4 a.m. to get those matches. From the squad itself, yeah, 8 total new players, potentially trying to get their first caps in 15s. We have, as we said, like Kiki Adowo and Brooke Rempel coming in from under 21s, but we also have some familiar names. Chloe Daniels as well is looking to get her first cap in 15s, but is well known for her try scoring abilities in 7s. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. Someone pointed out that a lot of names aren't in this squad, such as Olivia Apps, Fancy Bermudez, Flo Simons as well, and that is because the Pac-4 series coincides with the World Championship of Sevens. So, some decisions have to be made. Obviously, we know that certain names prefer to be in the Sevens format. Olivia Apps obviously scored, a brace of caps representing Canada at Sevens level. She didn't even get her first 15s cap, I think, until 2023. So it's very strange to talk of Olivia Apps, being at the World Cup, and being on the team that helped Canada win the Pac-4 title back in 2024. And then you remember, oh yeah, she's like a mainstay of the 7 squad. Of course she's gonna be there. But if you're wondering why is your favorite player not playing in the Pac-4 this year, it's probably because they're in the World Championship for 7s. But I think that also goes to show how great Canada's depth is at the moment, that you can have players in both tournaments and not feel threatened in any way, shape, or form. Speaking of a squad announcement, we've also had the under-20 training camp squad for Canada's men. Jeff, do you have more insight into this?
Well, it's just a training camp squad. It's a large squad. There's one player from the Saints, the Calgary Saints, the club my daughter plays for. So congrats to Ronan Smith. I believe that's him. Other than that, it's a young squad. We'll see how they go. A lot of new names, a lot of names I didn't recognize from last year, which is fine. You got to bring in these guys. So interesting to see. I did notice quite a few players from England or South Africa seem to be in the squad, which was interesting.
Hmm.
Again, hopefully these guys can do well, get named to the actual squad, not just the training camp, and perform well at the U-20s this year.
Yeah, it's interesting about this because it's a training squad, and in the press release for this, they are looking for players to put their hand up for selection ahead of a potential Canada under-20 tour later this year. The press release does say further information to be announced when possible. Now, Jeff, recall back to last year, we had a bunch of under-20 players go to Fiji and play against the under-20s teams for Fiji, Tonga, and Samoa as well. And an interesting observation was made by BC Rugby News, is that the under-20s trophy isn't happening this year because the under-20s men's championship has been expanded from 12 teams to 16, which means that teams like the USA are going to be playing in that tournament, but Fiji under-20 are also playing in that tournament as well. So the question that is probably going to come up is, will there be a tour to either Tonga or Samoa? And if that is the case, is there going to be another team that joins as the fourth team for the under-20s? Maybe Canada take on hosting duties and bring these players over. And because, these kind of tournaments can be done in 10 days, like 5 days between games to give the players enough rest, but give them a full 80-minute match. But yeah, as the press release announced, there's more information to follow once it does get announced. And when they know and they tell us, we'll let you guys know. So
Yeah,
that's the
I
word at
did.
the moment.
Yeah, I also just counted. There were, I mean, 12 foreign-born players invited to this camp. I'm not like maybe they moved to Canada young and that's just their place of birth. But yeah, interesting and a heavy England influence in that
Mm.
12. So it's going to be interesting to see how the camp plays out and who's selected. It'll be very interesting.
Yeah, I think it's a good opportunity for a lot of these players. Like you said, there's a lot of names coming from England. I can see at least one name from Ireland and one name from South Africa as well. Obviously, this is just a training camp. This doesn't lock anyone in to play for Canada at senior level. But if they've got the interest to come and play for Canada, and mom or dad's passport or grandma and grandpa's passport says they're from Canada, or again, maybe they were born in Canada and then moved when they were young. We don't know, but I'm saying if they want to play for Canada, that's fine by me. No
Yes.
problems on my end. Okay, so um, let's go from talking about the under 20 squad to the senior squad, because there have been yet more international signings for Canadian players. Jeff, you have a bit of knowledge of a player that's been signed to the Champ in England.
Yeah, Shane O'Leary. He's 32 years old currently right now. He's primarily a fullback now, but he would be a first five option too in a pinch. So he has signed for Nottingham in England, and congrats to him. Hopefully he performs well, and we might see him again in the red jersey later this year.
I think he's definitely a good option to have, and obviously getting experience in the English system. Yes, the Champ isn't the same level as the Prem, but it's a professional environment as you can get, and Shane obviously having played in Europe as well before his brief stint for Toronto and playing a few smaller clubs. So, all good by me. And, we love to see Canadians getting more game time on this podcast. And speaking of the men's senior team, it has been announced we have the first leg dates for the new Nations Cup. And we have all of Canada's games for the first leg. They will be taking place in Alberta and Manitoba.
Mhm.
So the first games that we have, it will be Canada versus Spain, which is of course going to be the big match in the Men's World Cup in 2027, and that will be held at Clark Stadium. Then the following week, it will be a double header actually at Clark Stadium, because the first game will be Tonga versus Spain, and followed up with Canada versus Portugal. And then finally, we head over to Princess Auto Stadium, and we have another doubleheader with Tonga versus Portugal, and finally Canada versus Zimbabwe. So those games will be across July, the first of which will be Canada versus Spain on July 4th. Then Canada versus Portugal on July 11th. And finally, Canada versus Zimbabwe on July 18th. Jeff, what do you make of this announcement?
Uh, well, I'm happy for Winnipeg to get a game. It is good for them, like to spread out the games, try to grow the sport in non-traditional rugby markets. The capacity at Princess Auto Stadium, I'm still trying to get my head around that name, is 32,000. Hopefully they will be able to get a good crowd there. I don't know what the local club scene is there and how well they can mobilize to get that crowd, but I'm hopeful. Uh, Spain and Portugal up in Edmonton at Clark Stadium, 5,100 capacity. I don't know if it's possible to expand it to get 2 or 3,000 more there. Hopefully they can, because they did sell out last year, I believe, there. So hopefully they can get another great crowd there. A bit disappointed Calgary didn't get a game. A bit surprised, to be honest, because we had an excellent crowd, over 13,000, I believe, in August there. But maybe I'll get up to Edmonton and catch one of the games. We'll see. But hopefully Canada can go 3-0. Spain up first. That's probably going to be Spain and Portugal will both be tough games. Uh, so I'm hopeful that we can get a near full strength squad and do well. And hopefully we can get the brooms out for that series.
Definitely. I think that is the goal, 3 for 3. I was having this chat earlier. It was like looking at where Canada were against Spain a couple of years ago, losing by over 20 points. And then last year, obviously, that penalty at the end gave Spain the win. But, a far, far stronger Canada side. And you can't really just place it on one player being back in the squad. I think the squad as a whole took the game seriously, were able to capitalize on all opportunities presented to themselves. Unfortunately, that means now in this version, Spain are going to be far more focused, far more on the ball, especially knowing that this is their opponent they will be facing come 2027. Portugal as well, looking back on that game, that was a game that was decided within a try score. So I think that Canada can definitely put Portugal to the sword again and try to claim home advantage and push them over to get another win. Canada have never played Zimbabwe, so I have no measuring stick to really put against them. But it's going to be interesting to see. So Canada will have this game against Zimbabwe. In November, they are scheduled to face Hong Kong, China as well. Zimbabwe and Hong Kong are the closest teams in terms of rankings to Canada at this point. So I'm hoping by the end of this year at least, Canada can push themselves up the rankings and definitely be in like 23rd or 22nd compared to the 25th they are at the moment.
Yes, I'm not sure how far away they are from 20th or 18th, but hopefully they can get into that range. Yes. It'll be very interesting to see the squad for these three home tests. It'll be very interesting. There's only, honestly, 2 players I will forgive for not showing up.
Yeah.
And I don't understand why, but there's a couple players I want to see in the red jersey this summer at home.
Injuries aside, yes, I hope that we can have the strongest squad possible, but I agree with you. I think a couple of certain players that are currently residing in France, I'll give them the benefit of wanting to take it easy this summer so they can be fully focused come.
We know they'll be there next summer.
Exactly. That is entirely what we're focused on at the moment. The hard graft has been done. Now it's just the preparation and getting the rest of the squad ready to take on that almighty challenge. But to get there, we have to go through the Nations Cup first. And I'm excited to see how this game comes around. Now, it will be a while. As we said, those games will be taking place in July, which means that it's going to be a while to see them. But when they do come on, as well as the Pacific 4 series, it will be available on TSN. And if you want to watch any other rugby coming up this weekend, we have Super Rugby Pacific and the Japanese League One. That will be on Premier Sports. MLR had their first games last weekend, and they will be coming back. They will also be available on Premier Sports in Canada. The Champions and Challenge Cup is returning. That will be on Flow Rugby. And we are in the playoff picture for the Premiership Women's Rugby. You can watch those games on YouTube. And if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to check out more, as well as our written pieces, on our website, therougerugby.ca. You can also find our podcasts on Spotify and YouTube, and we are across social media including Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, and Blue Sky, all at the Rouge Rugby. Jeff, where can people find you on social media?
You can find me on X at WP Rugby Jeff.
And you can find me across social media at Hardman, spelled H4RDMAN. Well, Jeff, that's where we're going to end this episode. Thank you for joining me, and thank you all for joining us for another episode of the Rouge Rugby podcast, where we talk about real Canadian rugby. We hope you can join us again next time.